Good evening, and welcome to Doctorpiece Theater. My name is Dr. Dennis Business, and tonight we will continue our dive into This Is Why I Hate You. When we last left our hero, we had just entered the Matrix. And I think it's safe to assume that Matrix rules apply going forward. Chapter 4. Pray It Away. It has been a week since I went to school. Fortunately for me, my girlfriend had visited me at home a few times since. Ashley and I have made out a number of times. If anything, what I did to John brought us closer together in the long run. A lot of people wonder why girls are like jerks. Why a lot of women are into guys with attitude problems over the friend-zoned nice boys. If you appreciate reality over fantasy, it takes one look at the animal kingdom to figure out why girls often choose to be with guys who are insensitive and domineering. In nature, the lion that fights the hardest, the alpha male, he is the one that the lioness mates with. The most aggressive and dominant animal is the one who spreads his genetics, not the submissive, nice alternative males. Sometimes comparing ourselves to other animals can be ridiculous, as some connections are thin or extremely irrelevant. However, this is a case of what we are deep down. Who I am comes from the core of my being. I am an alpha, and I will be till the day I die. I say it every day. We are products of our configurations. We are controlled by how we were raised, our other childhood experiences, chemicals in our brains, and our bodies themselves. As soon as the majority of straight women stop being attracted to the strongest and most ambitious males, all stop being one. Until males are obsolete, my body has needs. And being angry at the world doesn't hurt my position. Now, since the day I was suspended from school, my father has had quite a few things to say. You probably guessed it. One of those things he was saying is he's praying for me. You know what changes things? Changing them. I know it sounds stupid, but prayer does not equate to changing anything outside of satisfying your need to feel like you accomplished something. Prayer is often just the poor man's version of donating money to a cause. When you are incapable of doing something or are too lazy to do anything proactive about a problem, get on your knees and make a wish. That satisfies people for some reason. Everyone but those living their lives realistically. Other than praying for me, my father has been out of the house with his girlfriend a lot. That left me plenty of room to gratify myself almost constantly using the sites he hadn't yet blocked on his computer. It's easy to get around parent blocking. All I had to do was go to the least popular sites I could find, and bam, no filter. My father abandoning me for his girlfriend also offered the always welcome gift of being able to generally leave my room without worrying about being judged or lectured. Ashley told me the other day that John had to get surgery on the arm I broke. As a joke, I told my dad to pray for his arm to have a quick recovery, and he smiled, thinking for a moment that was actually supportive of his faith. The real reason I asked my father to pray is because I know nothing to little he prays for comes true. If there is a God, he, she, is making it a point to ignore him. Who knows? I could get lucky, and John could be in for a long recovery. His recovery could offer him plenty of time to think about not touching women without their consent. I know all this makes me sound like a terrible human being, and I no doubt am on multiple levels, but you only know a fraction of the story. Even so, much of who I am and what I've been through, I likely will not tell you. Some things are just better off unsaid. Right after you fucking say them. Chapter 5. Rejected and Aroused. Cold wisps of air filled my darkened, decaying school on my third day back. The place is so pathetic. I wondered if they ever planned on fixing anything. What would it take to get things repaired? A ceiling caving in on an entire class of students. Would that be enough? Every other person at school has been looking at me nervously for the past few days. Today their looks could be in response to the fact I painted half my face like a skeleton. Every other person at school has been looking at me nervously for the past few days. Today their looks could be in response to the fact I painted half my face like a skeleton. It could also be that I wore the same trench coat I had on when I broke John's arm. I didn't even wash the blood off it yet. It could also be the silver tooth I got to replace the one John knocked out of my face. Should I care why I've become a bigger outcast than I was before? Do any of their opinions or lives even matter? Because of our school's dress code, I was called into Principal Lehman's office in the middle of my first period class. I was pretty sure it was my fat, pathetic excuse for a teacher, Mr. Hanson, who complained. I saw him mumbling on the phone just after I walked in. It must have been to the principal. Principal Lehman was sitting firmly upright in his retro chair staring at me as I walked into his office. He asked me to close the door, so I did. I went in to stand in front of his desk, and he asked, "Are you a psychopath or something?" With a tightly bound facial expression, I replied, "A psychopath is someone who suffers from a mental disorder. I believe I'm rather sane. However, they tend to express violent behavior, so I could be." Principal Lehman did not look happy with my answer. His lack of amusement didn't surprise me. Lehman then said something that blew my mind. "Your parents are religious. Your father in particular constantly judges every little thing you do. Your mom and him are extremely condescending and have little respect for what you have to say. You're expected to be their carbon copy, and when you say something they disagree with, ignore it or pretend you're evil for having shared your views." He stared at me, waiting for my response. "No," I replied, automatically assuming I was lying. He said, "No? I've met kids like you 1,000 times. You're all the same." I replied again, "No, my mom is dead. She was the only good thing about my home life." Principal Lehman paused awkwardly, looking to the side. I expected him to apologize or show some kind of remorse for not being sensitive about my mom being dead. He cut my train of thought in half. "So why is your face painted like it's Halloween?" Did he really just ignore the fact I lost my mom after all he said to me? Arthur Linfelt? He asked. My name is Arthur Gale, I replied. He smiled and said, Arthur Linfelt is the name on the paperwork in front of me. Arthur Linfelt is your legal name. These papers also happen to be your expulsion documents, and all I have to do is fill out an explanation for your expulsion and sign. His words left no room for my normal attitude to flourish. He had my complete attention. Why do you have expulsion papers with my name on it? I asked. He replied, Because you look like a psychopath. You act like a psychopath, and if I expel you the moment you do something I don't like again, I'm fairly sure you'll be saving the students at that school a lot of trouble. We both knew what he was implying. I looked like the kid that shoots up schools, especially the ones at Columbine. I would never kill people just because I didn't like them. I imagine it every other day, but it doesn't mean I want it to happen. I hated feeling like I was comparable to someone who would play God with people who were no threat to anyone I cared about. It's one thing to defend those you love. It's another to hurt someone for absolutely no reason, aside from your desire alone. I felt a heavy sickness in my stomach and sat down in one of the two chairs facing Principal Lehman's piece of crap desk. So, I think you get the point. You can leave, Principal Lehman said literally after I just sat down. I stood back up silently and left the room. Principal Lehman screamed after me, And wipe off that makeup, kid! I felt tears start to form in my eyes. I know, it's pathetic, but I wasn't in control. I'm used to being the strongest one in every room. Principal Lehman was bigger, louder, and had more power at his fingertips than I had ever had in my whole body. As I walked into the bathroom, I looked in the mirror. My eyes were bloodshot, and I knew I was about to lose it, but I couldn't. I didn't want to allow my anger and sadness to conquer me. It would cause me to rip apart the bathroom, and I knew I would get expelled. I had to remove the face paint, or I would no doubt also risk my expulsion. I was overwhelmed, but I had to swallow it all and bury it deep. I'm just another moron. I'm just another victim of self-obsession. I wanted to be around my girlfriend, to protect her at school. I wanted to graduate high school. I didn't want to be some dropout loser with no future. All of these thoughts burned through my mind as I began to wipe the skeleton off my face. My emotions finally managed to push tears down my cheeks. The water-soaked brown paper towel was so useless and tacky for makeup removal. It's the little things in life that can make you snap. As a few tears fell, Chris from my first period class walked in. He immediately noticed me wiping my face. He smirked and scoffed. That didn't last long, bro. I ignored him as I wiped the water and tears off my face. I didn't have the energy to imagine lopping his head off with a machete, or throwing him off the top of the school roof onto the cement head first. I didn't have the energy to hate, only self-pity, so I stood there silently and kept wiping my face. I was almost completely done wiping the paint off by the time he came back out of the bathroom stall. He spoke to me again, saying, Dude, not everyone is your enemy, bro. I ignored him and finished wiping my face. Whatever, man. I'm on your side, bud, he said, obviously trying to befriend me. I replied under my breath, No, you're not, and walked out. As I returned to my first period class, I could hear the other students trying to hold back their laughter. Their inconsistent breathing made it more than obvious what they were thinking. Their eyes behaved like whack-a-mole, darting in and out to get a glance at the freak. There were only a couple people who didn't seem amused by the fact that my face was half red from just having removed the paint. It was some foreign kid who barely spoke English, and someone who was clearly as out of their place as I was, only he didn't show it with his wardrobe. In fact, I barely saw him speak to anyone else since the day I got to that class. The only peace I could find in that class existed between the foreign guy who can't speak and the other kid who just chose not to speak. Coincidentally, those two were also basically the only people I hadn't yet imagined killing at some point. There's no satisfaction in watching innocent people suffer. For the sake of keeping myself from losing it on the entire class and making a bigger joke out of myself than I already was, I just focused on my bedroom and my plan to lock myself in it for the rest of the day once I got home. Chris was eyeballing me as he walked back into class, but that was short-lived as the bell went off before he could even get to his desk. At lunch later that day, I was sitting with Ashley and all her friends. I didn't have any friends of my own, so my only real purpose was to serve as Ashley's butt pad for her chair. As she sat in my lap, I found myself listening to what I always dreaded hearing. It was the offensively ignorant and clearly unexamined opinions of her brain-dead preppy friends. From their views on the president to what other students were wearing that day, I experienced an intense urge to walk around the table and stick a knife in the back of each of their thoughtless little heads. No doubt introducing a metal blade to the back of their brain would increase their IQs at least a few points. It would be difficult for them to decline because the intellectual rock-bottom state they were already in. Ashley was the American poster girl and fit right in with the others. Now me still drowning in black clothing created quite the eyesore at the lunch table. There was no explanation as to why Ashley was even hanging around this people, aside from the likely possibility that she had a lot in common with them. With that, it was becoming more and more evident to me that Ashley was only with me because she was attracted to my type. Aside from her calling me handsome from time to time, and laughing at the observations I made, we seemed to have very little we could rely on. I spoke in a low tone to Ashley, asking if we could ditch the group we were in. She ignored me, so I said again, "Let's live." Ashley, still sitting on my lap, acted like I said nothing at all. Finally, I spoke in a normal tone. "Ashley, can we ditch your loser idiot friends?" They all stopped blabbing about their nonsense views of the world and stared at me. It was obvious Ashley prioritized being accepted by her friends over me. Even to this point, she ignored me. I couldn't believe she was still acting like I said nothing. But I wasn't going to stick around. I was fed up. So I slid her butt into the chair beside me and stormed off. Ashley called after me as I left the cafeteria. In response, I lifted my middle finger while continuing to walk away. The rest of lunch I spent sitting in front of the door to my next class. After about an hour of getting home, I got a call from Ashley. She wanted to know what she could do to make things better between us. She insisted that she didn't mean to ignore me, but how could she not mean to do that? Her actions, or lack thereof, seemed to be blatantly intentional. Despite the implausibility of her position, I decided to give her a chance to fix things. A chance I thought held no promise. "Dress up like you're goth tomorrow," I said into the phone. Ashley was silent for a moment, and then asked, "What do I wear?" I replied, "Wear all black clothes and dark makeup." She replied, "Okay." I didn't believe for a second she was going to do it. I was fixed on this idea that she was only into me for one reason, and that an alpha male pulling her away from her pack of cackling turkeys would only make her feel weak. Such an act would contradict her initial interest in me in the first place. Ashley's goal being security. She would show up dressed in her normal attire and give up on the lone wolf I naturally found myself to be. As the next day of school began, Ashley stood where she knew I'd see her as I walked in. Her hands were interlocked in front of her thighs. Her butt was slightly perked out. I noticed this because she was wearing black tights. As her eyes came clearly into view, I could see her purple eyeshadow, plum-colored lipstick, and purple glitter on the black jean jacket she was wearing. I was overwhelmed by her gesture of loyalty. I never wanted to physically dominate someone more than I had in that moment. I quickly walked up to Ashley and heavily kissed her as the other students passed by. As our lips pulled apart for a moment, I said, "Thank you." She smiled and replied, "Guess I'm yours after all." I laughed under my breath as we continued kissing till the bell for first period rang. We hung out whenever we could the rest of the day and spent most of lunch just talking and kissing alone. Some people can still surprise me. It's all part of why I haven't found my place at the end of a rope just yet. That was chapter 5 of This Is Why I Hate You. And we don't really have a story yet. Arthur is who he is. And that's going to be the way things are, I guess. I'm sure we can get into that another time. Because this has been Dr. Piece Theater. And my name is Dr. Dennis Business. And as always, my friends,